Today we're gonna set up some lasers like at an event. So what we're gonna do is we have 3 lasers, it's 3x3 lasers, and we're gonna set them up to a truss just in the back. We will do some wiring, so you know how to do the wiring, and start the controller to control the lasers directly. So first of all, we need to set up the lasers to the truss. There's different aspects we need to consider. So first of all, we need to consider laser safety. So when working with lasers, especially when working with lasers at the truss, setting up lasers, the most important aspect to deal with is laser safety. Because the closer you are at the laser, the more dangerous it actually is. So be careful when setting up the lasers, and also make others that help you setting up the lasers aware that it's a dangerous task and everybody must follow the rules. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna follow the steps. First of all, we mount the lasers in a safe way. Second is we do the wiring. And third is we put on power, but before that we check if everything's correct. And only after we attach the power and everything is set to the correct operation mode, then we will switch on the key switch and disable the safety features to let the lasers go. So let's start over with mounting the lasers. I prepared something here in the back. As you can see, 2 of them are already mounted and 1 of them is still here. What I have like a small spigot pin on here, and I have a Manfrotto super clamp, which is super handy for actually mounting lasers quickly and easily. So the only thing I'm gonna do is I just plug that in and attach it tightly. That's it, the laser hangs. And I have my power cord, but I don't insert it yet. I just do the signal wiring first. Let's have a look at the signal wiring. What we're gonna do is we have network cable, because these units have all the Shownet mainboard included, so we don't have anything to deal with additional external interfaces, nothing like that. It's all simple network wiring. These units have the advantage that they have built-in network switches as well, so we can just daisy chain the control signal. I will show you an alternative later with an external switch, how you do it with an external switch, if you don't have an integrated mainboard, like for example with the Club Series lasers where you don't have the internal Shownet, you probably want to use an external one, and then you need the external network switch. Let's start the wiring. As you can see, I just daisy chained the signal from one LAN port to the other LAN port. I continue doing that. And now I still only have to do the connection to the computer. Now, this cable basically goes to the computer. If you have a laptop like I have here, you may have one that has not a full LAN port, but one with a small flap. And that may not be a very stable connection because the cable can go back and forth and wobble a bit. So I always recommend having an additional external network port. Like in this case, it's a small port replicator and goes to my USB-C. This is a much more stable connection, and I prefer that instead of having that wobbly one at my laptop, basically. If you have a full LAN connector at your laptop, no problem at all. But if you have a wobbly one like I have, I prefer the external interface. And that's it. So wiring is done on the signal side. Let's have a quick chat about what's happening on the power side. Basically, if you consider laser safety, there is basically 2 methods you can use for ensuring to comply with the required safety E-Stop. It depends on the country you are in. Some countries require to have the E-Stop mandatory with the interlock circuit. We will see that later. I'll show that in a separate part of the video. But I have this all wired to a power E-Stop. So my E-Stop solution just switches off the whole power of the system, of the whole setup, and that's how I basically shut it off. Not all countries basically want to have that. So it is something that is special, but in most countries that is totally accepted, and it is fast enough. Obviously it's fast enough. There is some certain kinds of lasers that you shouldn't E-stop with power, but normally the normal ones you come across, it's no problem with. So I have E-stop on the power side. That's why you don't see me wiring E-stops at the moment. We will wire them later. So I have power E-stop. I can go with the interlock bridges in this case. This is what I'm gonna do. You see that at these units already here and here, I have the interlock bridges inserted, and I do the interlock bridge with the last one as well. I put it in here, interlock. This simply bridges pins 7 and 8 in these connectors, and it makes sure that the lasers operate, because this allows for attaching various types of contacts. You can have a door contact, you can have an E-stop as a contact to just switch off the lasers in emergency. This is required by IEC 6825-1, and that's why all the lasers have this. All lasers class 3B and 4, obviously. So we have the interlocks connected. Now we're gonna connect the key switches. Key switch here, here, and here. What I do now is I do not turn the key. I just insert the key. Why is that? You will see. If I just insert the key, because now we can set all the operation modes correctly in the display if we apply power, but it's made sure that no output can come out of the laser. This is important, because if the laser is set to automatic operation or to sound to light operation, you have no idea what the previous user of the lasers actually set to the laser. So you must make sure that you have the correct operation mode, otherwise there will be emission of laser, and you do not want to have that in an uncontrolled way. That's why we apply power now, and then we set the units to the correct operation mode. Let's have a look. Okay, we connected power, and you see the displays are powering up on these units, and we can check which operation mode these units are in. Okay, all units seem to be fine. They're all in the operation mode LAN Shownet, which is the correct operation mode for us using the lasers with computer control. As I want to go the easy route in this case, I just switch them all to auto IP. I don't have any DHCP server in the network, so no controller that can actually apply addresses. So they all need to auto negotiate IP addresses with the computer. That's why all of them go to auto IP. My computer is set to normal auto negotiation, so the standard setting basically, so everything should connect instantly and should be more than fine. So what we have is, we have them all connected, but currently it's not possible to output anything. Why? Because the key switches aren't turned yet. As I have full control over what's happening, and I haven't started any output, any control of the software, I can turn the keys now to make sure that the lasers can operate. If you have the situation that these lasers are hung high up and somebody's standing on the ladder and mounting everything, I would now shut off the power again with an E-stop, in this case, E-stop the whole system, then have the keys turned, everybody come down from the ladders, everybody come down from the mounting situation, and then we apply power again. just to make sure that no glitches happen, nothing can happen at all in terms of laser safety. So in my case, I have everything down here. I don't need to switch off power again. I just switch on the keys. We should now be able to directly operate the lasers and have output from them. So it is a very simple process. It's some easy steps you need to follow and you can get going. Let's have a look if we can actually access the lasers with the admin tool. When you first start the admin tool, this is an important thing to consider. There is a warning message coming up telling you which networks you want to allow the admin tool to connect. Check all of the boxes, because if you open that admin tool with just one network connected, all the other ones will not be checked and you will get problems, because network connectivity is something that is strictly controlled by Windows, and connectivity is most important to us. So if Windows blocks out things, they won't work. So we make sure that all the firewall rules are applied accordingly. So we open up the tool again with a double click, and then all the devices are connected automatically and we can select them and output from them. You can see we have 3 devices connected currently and they're all detected, and I can use the admin tool to do test patterns to check the different features of the laser, and when everything's correct, I can also directly connect with my computer software. But what I want to do is I want to do the zoning first. I want to apply global zones, apply global settings and all that, the whole setup. That can be done with the admin tool now. I prefer to have these hardware set zones, by the way, if I'm at a venue where I live control lasers, and especially if there's any kind of DMX or ArtNET control, it's much easier to have that set inside the laser, because you don't have to worry about any glitches later on. Everything will be set, and even if you have any problems on site, you can still just reboot all your whatever infrastructure you have, and the lasers still contain their safe zones, and that is really handy. That is what you set with the admin tool. You can do that by DMX and ArtNET, by the way, as well, but that's a different procedure. Don't want to show that here. I showed that in other videos how that works. It's also a very easy process. Let's have a look at the admin tool here. I hit setup mode and I enable output, and of course laser safety first. We need to make sure nobody's in the area we're pointing the lasers at, but currently you see it's no problem. I just have the wall here. And you can also see that the projection is kind of squashed together. This is due to the safe zone that is applied inside that laser. I just want to reset that zone and save it, and I also want to use a different pattern, my test pattern, so I can better see the whole span of the area that the laser covers. So this is for one of the lasers. I just reduced the power, the size a bit. I just reduced the size. Want to have that smaller. And probably shift it up a bit. Now it's shifted up, and I want to save that zone and head on to the next laser. I can do the same thing with the next laser. It's got also a different kind of zone. Just want to do that. It's slightly different, but I don't mind at all. And I just shift that up as well. Save. So we have different positions, different zones we set on the hardware side. Now let's start the computer software to get control of the whole setup. To do that, we need to close the admin tool. If you don't close the admin tool, the software will not have access to the lasers. Why? Because there can only be one software or control option to access these main boards inside, because otherwise there would be an overlay of control signals, and that would be very dangerous in terms of laser control. You cannot have mix-up of controls. So that's why if there's one control signal connected, no other control signal can hook up to the lasers anymore. That's why close the admin tool first, then we can start the laser software. To start our software, we need the license dongle inserted, which is Showcontroller Plus in my case. I just insert it to the USB port. And start up live. In my case, it's Showcontroller Live. It's the easiest way to just get some output of these guys. I just press laser on and select one of these patterns. And I also need to assign the output channels to these units, because before it was set to a different mode. So this is just one, but I output the same thing to all of my channels, and you see the different zones. They look differently. Different position, different size. I didn't change anything inside the software. It's just hardware side. It's a setting hardware side, which is cool because we can just stream out flat content from the software. We don't need to modify it, no corrections. It's all inside the laser already. As you saw, it's very simple. You just connect the signal wiring, do the safety things, and connect power. Now, if you don't have an integrated switch, you need to use an external switch, because you need to get the signal to all of the lasers. If you use an external switch, it's not daisy chaining the signal from one to the other. It's a star-shaped, basically, connection. So you have the switch in between, and each cable runs from the switch directly to the laser. Let me just grab a switch for you. Here we have the switch. It is a very basic switch. It's an unmanaged switch in my case, and I also chose a switch that has an integrated power supply, so I don't have to fumble around with these kind of, dodgy external power supply things. And I also chose a small switch, not a rack mounted one, because this one can easily go to the truss, and we don't have like bulky racks somewhere. But it all depends on what you do, where you do it, what's the requirements. So there is many options in terms of switches, and that's up to you and to your requirements on site. But let's just use this cheap switch. I just unplug the network we have now and plug it to the switch, so you see what's going on with switch wiring. So the switch basically directly connects with a computer first. So we have our signal that comes from the computer, and that one goes to the switch. It doesn't matter which port of the switch you use. It doesn't matter at all. So they're all equal at the switch. If you don't have a router is a different thing. Don't use a router, use a switch. So all are the same type of ports. You can see that at the back part of the switch. Now we go to the first laser. It's the one farthest away because that's the longest cable I have. So we go to the last one first. And as we don't have a second LAN port at the lasers, we can't daisy chain because we assume we don't have a second one. So we just go from the laser directly to the switch. And the last one, we do the same thing, just from the switch to the laser. As we did this, and we didn't change anything else, the software should be able to directly access the lasers again and directly output. Let's have a look if it works. We open the control center again here, and we put laser on. And there we go. Simply reconnected the interfaces, good to go, just press play. So there is no difference if you have an external switch or if you use the internal switches, if you have some. Some lasers have, some haven't, so it's up to you what you want to do. Now, initially I mentioned the safety. So we have the interlock connectors at the laser, and you can use the interlock connectors for safety. And I recommend doing that, and in some few countries, it is mandatory to do it that way, and it's not accepted to have the power E-stop. So let's see how the wiring goes with the E-stop. First of all, we unplug the plug bridges, the bridges for the interlock, which is these. And you see, when I unplug these, lasers switch off instantly. That's what these guys do. I grab my E-stop unit. It's got a key switch and an E-stop. And I grab some colored cables, because then you can more easily see how the different wiring is. I only have the longer ones, but I think you don't mind. So first cable goes from first laser to second laser. We just daisy chain the signal, actually. Then from the second to the third. And then from the last laser, we just directly go into our E-stop box. I plugged it in and it works. If I hit the button, shut off. If I open it again, restarts. That's the basic principle of an E-stop. There is different versions of E-stops. So there is some E-stops with delay. There is some E-stops with additional buttons to reinitiate the startup procedure and all this. So there is different requirements probably in some countries, but this is the basic E-stop that goes with most applications, and it's very easy to wire and very easy to use. One thing is important. The E-stop can only be directly wired. It is not a protocolized connection. So you cannot use a switch. You cannot use any kind of booster in between. You just can use direct wires. That gives a certain limitation on the distance you can run the E-stop signal. In most cases, it's no problem, but some cases require different solutions. If you have such a requirement, contact us directly and we'll help you out getting that sorted. We have different options for you for E-stopping things in a legal and good and feasible way, basically, depending on the requirement you have.